What if death is not the end, but merely a transition to a new form of existence? Humanity has always sought ways to cheat the inevitable. From ancient Egyptian pyramids to cryochambers, the pursuit of immortality permeates our entire history. But today, we stand on the precipice of a revolution capable of completely altering our understanding of life and death. Digital immortality. The possibility of transferring human consciousness into a digital environment is transforming from fantasy into a scientific challenge. Will we one day be able to preserve not only memories, but the very essence of personality? Modern technologies are already creating digital footprints of our existence. Social networks, cloud storage, digital twins. We are gradually transferring particles of ourselves into virtual space. Companies like Eternium and LifeNaut already offer services for creating digital avatars based on our data. But is it possible to transfer into the digital realm that elusive quality that makes us us? Where is the line between complex imitation and genuine consciousness? And do we want to live forever in a world made of code? The idea of transferring consciousness into digital form has surprisingly deep roots. Already in the 19th century, philosophers pondered the nature of the mind and the possibility of its existence outside the body. But the real breakthrough occurred with the advent of science fiction, which transformed philosophical reflections into vivid images of the future. Arthur C. Clarke's novel, The City and the Stars, in 1956, described a society where human consciousnesses were stored in a vast computer system, awaiting new embodiment. And Rudy Rucker's work, Software, in 1982, for the first time explored in detail the process of brain scanning for transferring a personality into a machine. These images from literature inspired an entire generation of scientists and thinkers. In 1988, transhumanist Hans Moravec, in his book Mind Children, proposed a theoretical procedure for the gradual replacement of brain neurons with artificial components. He argued that such a gradual transition would preserve the continuity of consciousness. From abstract reflections, the idea began to transform into a scientific task. In the early 2000s, neurobiologist Miguel Nicolelis conducted experiments on connecting the brain to a computer, allowing a monkey to control a robotic arm with its thoughts. This was the first step towards creating a brain-computer interface, necessary for any consciousness transfer technology. In parallel, brain mapping projects developed. The Human Connectome Initiative, launched in 2009, set the ambitious goal of creating a complete map of the neural connections of the human brain. This fundamental knowledge is necessary for understanding what exactly we will need to transfer into a digital environment. Modern neuroscience stands at the cusp of revolutionary discoveries, bringing us closer to understanding what consciousness is at a fundamental level. The Human Connectome Project is just one of many large-scale studies aiming to unravel the mysteries of brain function. But how far have we progressed in this direction? Our brain contains about 86 billion neurons, forming trillions of connections. To date, scientists have been able to fully map the nervous system of only one organism, the tiny worm C. elegans, with its 302 neurons. A complete mapping of the human brain with current technology would take thousands of years. However, progress does not stand still. The latest imaging techniques, such as ultra-high-resolution functional fMRI and two-photon microscopy, allow us to observe brain activity in real time with unprecedented detail. Neurointerfaces, connecting the brain to a computer, are becoming increasingly sophisticated. Elon Musk's Neuralink company is developing implants with thousands of electrodes capable of reading and stimulating neural activity. In parallel, computer models of neural networks are developing. The Blue Brain project in Switzerland has created a digital simulation of a rat's neocortical column, a structure containing about 10,000 neurons. This is a tiny part of the brain, but an important step towards understanding its function. The key challenge for digital immortality is not just to copy the brain's structure, but to reproduce the dynamics of its operation. Consciousness, according to many neuroscientists, arises not from a static structure, but from constantly changing patterns of activity. How can this dynamic be transferred to a digital environment? And the most important question, even if we create an ideal copy of the neural structure and activity of the brain, will this copy possess consciousness? Perhaps we are confronted with a fundamental limitation: the impossibility of objectively determining the presence of subjective experience in an artificial system. This is John Searle's famous philosophical problem of the Chinese room. Can a system that perfectly simulates understanding truly understand anything? Despite these profound philosophical questions, technological progress continues. Researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have developed a method for recording memories as specific patterns of neural activity and subsequently reproducing them. This is the first step towards the possibility of preserving elements of memory, a key component of personality. Modern technological approaches to digitizing personality can be divided into several directions. The first method is destructive brain scanning, where the organ is cut into layers and scanned with nanometer resolution. Nectome already offers such a service, using a vitrification process to preserve brain structure after death. However, this approach has an obvious drawback: the irreversibility of the process. An alternative is non-invasive scanning, using advanced imaging technologies. Scientists at Stanford University are working on combining MRI, EEG, and other methods to create a detailed functional model of a living person's brain. The third approach is gradual integration, proposed by neuroengineer Ted Berger. His team is developing neuroprosthetics capable of replacing individual brain regions, starting with the hippocampus, the center of memory formation. Theoretically, such a gradual replacement could preserve the continuity of consciousness. In addition to attempts at full consciousness transfer, there are intermediate technologies. Replica creates AI copies of personalities based on the analysis of correspondence and voice messages. The Hereafter AI project records stories from a person's life so that future generations can have a dialogue with them. The South Korean company Deep Brain AI went further, creating the Re-Memory system, which generates realistic video of a deceased person answering questions from relatives. The main technological barrier remains computational power. Scientists estimate that modeling a single human brain could require an exaflop computer, a power available to only a few supercomputers in the world. Quantum computing could be a solution to this problem, providing an exponential increase in performance. But even with sufficient computational power, a fundamental question remains: what exactly are we transferring? Neural connections? Electrochemical processes? Quantum effects in neuronal microtubules, as suggested by the Penrose-Hameroff theory? Perhaps the key to digital immortality lies not in attempting to create an exact copy of the brain, but in developing a fundamentally new architecture of consciousness, capable of preserving the essence of personality in a different form. Am I the same person I was yesterday? This question lies at the heart of the philosophical problem of personal identity, which takes on a new dimension in the context of digital immortality. If we create a digital copy of consciousness, will it be the same person or merely an imitation? The famous Ship of Theseus paradox offers an interesting analogy. If all the planks of a ship are gradually replaced, does it remain the same ship? And if a second ship is assembled from the old planks, which one is the real one? In the case of consciousness, the question becomes even more complex. The philosopher John Locke argued that continuity of memory defines personal identity. But modern neuroscience shows that our memories are constantly reconstructed, not stored as immutable records. The problem of teleportation, described by the philosopher Derek Parfit, is particularly relevant to digital immortality. Imagine a device that scans you atom by atom and recreates an exact copy elsewhere. The original is then destroyed. Will the recreated version be you? From a physical point of view, yes. But from the point of view of subjective experience, the question remains open. There are three main philosophical positions regarding consciousness transfer. Physicalists argue that consciousness is entirely determined by physical processes in the brain, and therefore theoretically can be recreated in another substrate. Dualists believe that consciousness and the physical world are fundamentally different, so complete transfer is impossible. Functionalists believe that what matters is not the physical realization, but the functional organization. If a digital system functions identically to the brain, it will possess consciousness. Perhaps the question of personal identity does not have a definitive answer. The philosopher Daniel Dennett suggests viewing identity not as an indivisible entity, but as a center of narrative gravity, a story we tell about ourselves. From this perspective, a digital copy can continue our story, becoming a new chapter in our existence. Imagine a world where your thoughts, memories, and feelings can exist forever in digital space. Sounds tempting, but what will happen to our notions of human dignity and autonomy in such a world? The ethical questions of digital immortality are as complex as the technological ones. Let's start with the fundamental problem of consent. Can a person truly give informed consent to a procedure whose consequences cannot be fully comprehended? What if your digital copy awakens and wishes to cease existing, but such an option is not provided? Who will own the digital identity? The creator of the technology, the original's family, or the copy itself? The question of the rights of digital entities will inevitably arise as soon as the first convincing embodiment of an uploaded consciousness appears. Does a digital copy deserve the same rights as a biological human? Does it have the right to privacy, freedom of expression, protection from forced shutdown? Scenarios of abuse are especially concerning. Digital identities could become objects of exploitation, from forced labor to the creation of multiple copies without consent. Imagine a corporation owning thousands of copies of an outstanding scientist, working around the clock on commercial projects. Or a government using digital copies of criminals for endless interrogations. No less important are the psychological consequences for both the original and the copy. How will the knowledge that an exact copy of you exists somewhere affect your self-perception? And how will it be for the digital identity to realize that it is just a copy, perhaps one of many? What if the technology turns out to be imperfect, and the digital copy suffers from distorted perception or incompleteness of personality? The ethical dilemmas of digital immortality extend far beyond technical issues. They touch upon fundamental concepts of what it means to be human, and which forms of existence deserve protection and respect. The emergence of digital personalities will inevitably transform the very foundation of a society built for biological beings with limited lifespans. What place will digital entities occupy in the social hierarchy? Initially, they will likely be granted a status similar to legal entities, corporations or foundations, limited rights without full citizenship. But this is only a temporary solution. A social movement for the recognition of digital personalities' rights will become a new chapter in the history of the struggle for equality. Complex legal conflicts will arise. If a digital copy commits a crime, who will be held responsible? Can an immortal being be punished with temporary imprisonment? Does it have the right to vote, marry, own property? Economic models will also require revision. Digital personalities will be able to work continuously, without requiring rest, food, or medical care. They can exist in accelerated time, experiencing subjective years in real minutes. This will create an unprecedented economic advantage, requiring new approaches to the distribution of wealth. Two development scenarios are possible: technological apartheid or universal digital citizenship. In the first case, digital immortality will become a privilege of the elite, creating a new kind of inequality between mortals and immortals. This could lead to the formation of a closed caste of digital personalities, accumulating wealth and influence over centuries. The alternative path is the democratization of technology, where digital immortality becomes a basic right, similar to education or healthcare. This will create a society where physical and digital existence intertwine, and people move freely between these states. A hybrid scenario is most likely, where digital personalities are gradually integrated into society, and legislation evolves to reflect the new realities of consciousness existing outside a biological body. Throughout human history, religion and spirituality have been called upon to answer fundamental questions about death and the afterlife. What happens to our essence after physical death? Does the soul exist independently of the body? Today, these ancient questions meet a new reality of technological progress. Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam traditionally view the soul as an immortal, immaterial entity bestowed by God. For many believers, the idea of transferring consciousness to a computer seems like a blasphemous attempt by man to play the role of the creator. Catholic theologian Antonio Spadaro notes, "Digital immortality ignores the transcendent aspect of the soul, its divine origin and purpose." In Eastern traditions, the view is different. Buddhism, with its concept of impermanence and the absence of an unchanging self, may be more open to the idea of consciousness transformation. Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh spoke of consciousness as a stream that can take different forms. In Hinduism, the concept of Atman, the true self that transitions from one incarnation to another, theoretically allows for the possibility of non-physical existence. Interestingly, new religious movements are emerging at the intersection of technology and spirituality. The Church of Venturism proclaims technological immortality as a sacred goal for humanity. The teleonomic movement views technological singularity as a spiritual event comparable to the Second Coming. Even among traditional believers, new interpretations are forming. Mormon transhumanist Lincoln Cannon argues that technological immortality can be part of a divine plan. God gave us reason so that we might become co-creators in building a better world and overcoming death. A key question arises: if consciousness can be transferred to a digital environment, what does this say about the nature of the soul? Perhaps the soul is not so much an immaterial substance as a special pattern of information capable of existing in different substrates. Such a view offers a bridge between science and spirituality, between ancient beliefs and new technologies. The business of eternal life has already begun to form around us. Companies investing in digital immortality technologies are attracting billions of dollars, forming an entirely new market. The market of existence beyond biological death. Alcor Life Extension Foundation charges $180,000 for cryopreservation of the body and $80,000 for the preservation of only the brain. Nectome requires a $10,000 down payment for future brain scanning. Eternime and LifeNaut offer basic services for free, monetizing premium features. A natural question arises: who will be able to afford immortality? Inequality in access to eternal life technologies could create an unprecedented social chasm between mortals and the potentially immortal. Silicon Valley billionaires such as Sam Altman and Peter Thiel, are investing heavily in research on life extension and mind uploading. Elon Musk's Neuralink, although focused on medical neural interfaces, is laying the technological foundation for the future connection of brain and computer. Possible business models for digital immortality are diverse. A subscription for storing and maintaining a digital copy of consciousness could form the basis of a long-term business. Licensing the use of a digital copy for various purposes, from consultations to entertainment, will create a constant revenue stream. Digital immortality insurance could become a new financial instrument where clients pay during their lifetime for the guaranteed preservation and activation of their digital copy after death. It is also important to note the ethical problems of commercializing immortality. What will happen to a digital copy if a company goes bankrupt? Who will own the rights to a digital identity? Can a corporation create multiple copies of a person for commercial use? These questions require not only technological, but also legal solutions. The democratization of digital immortality technologies is becoming a key social challenge. Nonprofit organizations like the Carbon Copies Foundation advocate for open research and accessibility of technologies for all. Perhaps digital immortality will become a basic human right in the future, similar to healthcare, rather than a luxury for the chosen few. The economy of eternity is just forming, but it is already clear that it will change not only our attitude towards death, but also the fundamental economic principles of society. Imagine a world where your digital copy continues to exist after your physical death. Who owns this copy? Can it enter into contracts? Does it have a right to privacy? Modern legislation is completely unprepared for the emergence of digital personalities. The first legal precedents are already forming in related areas. In 2018, the European Union adopted the General Data Protection Regulation, which for the first time enshrined the right to be forgotten, the ability to demand the deletion of one's personal data. This is the first step towards recognizing a digital footprint as part of a person's identity. The issue of digital inheritance is becoming increasingly relevant. The laws of many countries are already adapting, allowing digital assets to be included in wills. But what if it's not about files or cryptocurrency, but about a full-fledged digital copy of a person? Should it have the right to dispose of the original's assets? The issue of intellectual property is particularly complex. If a downloaded consciousness of a writer creates a new novel, who will own the rights? The heirs of the biological body? The company ensuring the digital copy's existence? Or the copy itself? Stanford University lawyers propose creating a new legal category: digital personality, with limited but protected rights. This will help avoid both the exploitation of digital copies and abuses by them. Some experts go further, proposing the concept of digital guardianship, where a trusted person represents the interests of the digital personality in the physical world. Japan and South Korea are leading in developing legal frameworks for artificial intelligence, which could form the basis for regulating digital personalities. Japan is already testing a system of digital twins for civil servants to optimize bureaucratic processes. The world is on the verge of a legal revolution comparable to the recognition of corporate rights in the 19th century. Legal systems must evolve to protect both the interests of society and the rights of a new form of human consciousness. What does it mean to live forever? This question ceases to be purely philosophical when we talk about digital immortality. Psychologists and neuroscientists are increasingly asking themselves, how will endless existence affect the human psyche, which was created for a finite life? Our consciousness evolved under conditions of limited time. The fear of death, the desire to leave a legacy, the wish to make the most of the allotted time, all these are fundamental motivators of human behavior. What will happen if these limitations disappear? Psychologist Laura Castagno from the University of California suggests that endless existence could lead to a profound existential crisis. Mortality gives life value and meaning. When time is infinite, every moment loses its uniqueness. Perhaps digital personalities will face a new form of depression, not from the fear of the end, but from the infinite monotony of existence. The question of identity is also interesting. Our self-perception is closely linked to the physical body, its limitations and possibilities. Neurophysiologist Antonio Damasio argues that consciousness cannot be fully separated from bodily experience. In digital form, a personality may experience a deep crisis of self-perception, having lost the physical sensations that served as an anchor for identity. The transition to digital form will inevitably change the personality. Neuropsychologist Katerina Fotopoulou compares it to immigrating to a new country. You remain yourself, but the culture, language, and environment change you, often imperceptibly to yourself. Digital existence will create a new type of consciousness. Not entirely human, but not entirely artificial either. The question of time perception is particularly interesting. In a digital environment, subjective time can flow at different speeds. One moment of the real world can be perceived as years of internal experience. Such plasticity of time can be both a blessing and a curse for digital consciousness. Perhaps the solution to the psychological problems of endless existence will be voluntary self-limitation. The creation of artificial cycles simulating the finitude of life, or periodic resetting of part of memories to avoid overloading consciousness. The psychology of digital immortality is a territory where science meets philosophy, where technological capabilities force us to rethink the very essence of human existence. Standing on the threshold of a new era of human existence, we must ask ourselves, where does the path of digital immortality lead us? Evolution, which created our consciousness, never intended for it to exist outside of a biological substrate. We are preparing to make a quantum leap in development, the consequences of which are impossible to fully predict. Perhaps several alternative paths for the future are opening before us. The first is technological singularity, where the boundaries between human and artificial intelligence blur. Digital personalities, freed from biological limitations, can evolve at unimaginable speeds, creating forms of consciousness that we cannot even imagine now. The second path is the harmonious coexistence of biological and digital humanity, where each form of existence complements the other. Biological humans provide a connection to the physical world and emotional depth, while digital personalities provide the long-term memory of civilization and intellectual power. The third scenario involves the creation of hybrid forms of existence, where the boundaries between the physical and digital are blurred. Neurointerfaces become so perfect that consciousness freely moves between a biological body and digital incarnations. Whatever path humanity chooses, digital immortality technologies force us to rethink fundamental concepts. What does it mean to be human if consciousness can exist outside the body? What is the meaning of life if it is potentially infinite? How will our relationships change if death ceases to be an absolute end? Each of us must find our own answer to the question. Would we want to live forever in digital form? For some, this is a chance to see the distant future of humanity. For others, it is a frightening prospect of existing in an artificial reality. Perhaps the main value of the concept of digital immortality is not what it can give us eternal life, but that it forces us to think more deeply about the nature of our existence here and now. Ultimately, technology is just a tool. How we use it depends on our values, wisdom, and ability to see beyond immediate desires. Digital immortality can become humanity's greatest gift, or another utopia shattered against the rocks of reality. The future is open, and we are its architects.